Donald Trump's stunning Middle East peace plan is reverberating around the world, but what does it actually mean on the ground? Well, Seth Frantzman, the author of the October 7th War, joins us now from Jerusalem. So, Seth, what's actually going to happen on the ground from this plan?
Well, the agreement was made overnight, basically, between October 8th and 9th. So now that that's signed, the Israeli cabinet and government has to convene and they have to basically approve the first phase of the deal. Then, in 72 hours, which is basically by Tuesday, the 48 hostages are supposed to be returned, and Israel's army will withdraw from about 70% of Gaza to about 50%. They'll pull back a bit. Now, there are questions about whether or not all 48 hostages will come back immediately, or if just the live ones it will take time to get the ones that are deceased. So there's a bunch of balls in the air, but basically that's the current question mark is the next few days, and then after that there will be talks about the next phase, which is a much more complicated phase involving numerous other points that we can discuss.
So here's the question. Why this time? I feel like for the past 2 years, we've been talking about negotiations and ceasefires and, 72 hours this and 48 hours this. But why this time? Why is this one different?
Well, I think this one is different, as you said in your intro. U.S. President Donald Trump put a priority on this. He wanted the hostages back. He said that he's going to do it. He wants peace. And he basically promised himself and he promised the world and the American people he'll get it done. And so what he did was he basically was able to bring together, Turkey, Qatar, Egypt, Hamas, America, Israel, all in the same room in Egypt and hammer it out. And he brought in a bunch of other ringers, to make this work. Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner, looks like Tony Blair is involved. And Trump has a personal friendship, with Turkey's president, Recep Tayyip Erdogan. So he was able to do all this. And I think that was the secret sauce. Now, he's tried to do this for a year since he was elected. And he succeeded a lot. In January through March, there was a ceasefire. That was unprecedented. And then he brought home Eden Alexander, the last living American hostage. That was important. He helped to end the Israel-Iran fighting in a 12-day war. So he's done a lot. And this is hopefully the crowning achievement.
So what does it look like for the future of Gaza? I know you don't have a way to look into the future, but if you could just maybe envision if this all goes according to plan, that's a huge if, what does Gaza look like in a year, 2 years from now?
Well, Gaza has been devastated by the war, not just in the large numbers of people killed, but the amount of destruction of infrastructure is massive and unprecedented. I mean, it looks like any massive war zone, like Germany in 1945 or something, but, it's a much smaller place. So there's a lot to be cleared, a lot of rubble. Look, a lot can be done in 2 years. I remember I was in the Battle of Mosul against ISIS. I covered it. And, parts of Mosul were devastated. But look at it today. They have an airport. It's a thriving city. A lot can be done in 2 years, but it requires money. It requires commitment. It requires people working hard. And it requires continued peace, not having terrorist groups running around amidst the rubble. How can you build things? So there's a lot of variables. I think that if Trump keeps on this, then that will be great, and it's possible good things will happen. But Trump has other things to do next year. He can't just do Gaza, 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 Gaza all the time. He wants to end this. So I think that's the big question mark. But it will take place over his term, and I hope the countries in the region, like UAE, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Turkey, etc. I hope that they will all invest responsibly, as opposed to all the countries playing politics, and that would not be good if everyone is at each other's throats or something. So they have to work together.
Well, I've obviously read a lot of your articles that you've put out on the Jerusalem Post, but your book, The October 7th War, what's kind of the thesis behind that and how, obviously you spend an inordinate amount of time studying what's happening in Gaza. What's your main point in that book?
I wanted to tell the story of the day of battle itself. If you were writing about Pearl Harbor, the Tet Offensive or something. So I wanted to tell the story of the people, the victims, the soldiers. And then I wanted to kind of give the lead up to it. How did we get here? And then the first few weeks or months of the war. So It's not so much a thesis. It's kind of this is what happened. It's a blow by blow account, and then there are some lessons learned at the end. I mean, Israel made a huge blunder, a huge mistake in underestimating Hamas. A lot of countries like Iran tried to use this as part of their quest for a new world order in which they will work with China or Russia or other enemies of the West. So October 7th war is not just October 7th. It's a battle for the new world order. And I think that I wanted to present that a bit as a thesis and then, build on that probably for another book or two down the road.
Well, I know it's late in Israel, and you are a wealth of information, Seth, so we'll have to have you back on. But maybe one last question. In the days and the weeks ahead, what should we be looking at? Who should we be looking at to determine whether this is actually going to pan out or if things are going to go south? What should we be keeping our eyes on?
Well, we definitely want to keep our eyes on, Israel's leadership, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu there to see whether he's, accepting the deal or whether he's saying, well, we're going to go back to fighting. We need to make sure that the hostages come home. And then we'll need to make sure that, see what Trump is saying and what other countries in the region, like Turkey or Egypt, are saying, if they're saying it's going to work. I think a lot of people are tired of war and they want a bit of a hiatus and ceasefire, but that doesn't mean that they won't then jockey for their position up until December of the new year.
Seth, I appreciate your time, my friend.